What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Respect Coin podcast. I know we've taken a couple weeks off. Holiday has been around. A lot of stuff going on, but we're back right before the semifinals of the college football playoff, right before wild card weekend in the NFL. We've got a lot to get to. It's been a lot of episodes. I believe this is the 8th episode, so shout out to everyone who has supported to this point. Really do appreciate it. If you like, subscribe, tap in on the CHSN app. Any way that you listen, I appreciate it sincerely. Let's get into it. It's been a couple weeks. I've won some bets. I've lost some bets. A lot of stuff flying around, but I'm going to get started, as I always do, with the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we have a little bit of a switch up this week. I'm not going to tell you about all the bets that I've hit or lost, many more losses than wins, because there's no context. But what I can do is flip the format a little bit and dive into this very important topic in Chicago sports, which is the search for the next Bears head coach. If you're interested in betting markets around the Bears head coach, you have to wait a little bit for the legal markets to discuss and put up some odds. These are information-based markets. So when you see line movement, that means somebody knows something. Somebody's discussed something. Somebody's name popped up on an interview list. If you've been following the Bears, which I hope most people in this market have been, people who are listening, they are going to interview everybody. They do not have a prom date, and they are shooting from the hip to figure out who it is they want to take to the big dance. And I kind of dislike that because of a few reasons. A, we fired Matt Eberflus right after Thanksgiving. That is a long time ago, so they should have been starting some of these interviews, getting this process started before this to vet out some candidates. There's a lot of reasons why you could say getting ahead of it helps, because you are competing with other people in the league. There are a lot of vacant head coaching positions right now, and if you want the best person for your team, you have to beat out the other teams and basically showcase why your organization should be the place where this head coach wants to be. So, like I said, legal books do not have these odds just yet, but I've turned to the offshore. I did a little Googling, and betonline.ag, it's an offshore book. Please do not use this book. I'm using this for the purpose of content in this podcast. I repeat, do not bet anything on betonline AG. Let's talk about what the odds look like, because there's been some interesting movement over the last couple days. So, as it stands right now, the favorite to be the next head coach of the Chicago Bears is Ben Johnson, offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions. The Bears have said that they plan to interview him. They might have interviewed him already. These will be virtual interviews. Obviously, Ben Johnson is preparing for his playoff run with the Lions, and this is no secret, right? Everyone knows Ben Johnson's going to be the hottest commodity on the coaching market at this moment in this cycle. He had interviews last season. You know, he's been buzzing for a few years, and now it feels like his opportunity to step into this role. So on BetOnline AG, he is plus 100, so even money to be the Bears' next head coach. And the reason why I'm sticking on this is because yesterday the favorite was Cliff Kingsbury at plus 200. So a quick flip on BetOnline AG. Let me list out the rest of the candidates. Currently, as it stands, Ben Johnson, even money, he's at the top. Cliff Kingsbury dropped down to plus 450. He's the second. Aaron Glenn, plus 500. Brian Flores, plus 500. Somehow Marcus Freeman's name is still on this list, plus 700. Mike Vrabel, who the Bears announced that they plan to interview, he's plus 900. Todd Monken of the Ravens, plus 900. Thomas Brown, the interim head coach, at plus 1,200. Then we get to the bottom, Arthur Smith, plus 1,600. Pete Carroll, 33-1 plus 30, 33-1 plus 3,300. Joe Brady plus 3,300. And finally, John Gruden plus 5,000. So let's get into the good, the bad, the ugly. I'll start with the good. The good is I am very, very, very excited to see that Ben Johnson is the favorite right now. Again, this is an offshore sports book. I'm not using this to bet. I'm using this for information for the purpose of this content. And even though I'm not planning to bet anything on this site, seeing his name at the top makes me really excited. The Bears could really use an offensive mind to pair with Caleb Williams in the future. There has been chatter about Ben Johnson wanting to bring his own GM in. The Bears appear that, they want to go forward with Ryan Poles. That could create some friction. But seeing his name at the top makes me happy. Second in this good category, Mike Vrabel at plus 900. Mike Vrabel is a different kind of coach than Ben Johnson, I would say. Mike Vrabel is very much a disciplinarian. He's a big personality. He wants a lot of control, and he deserves it. And it is well deserved. He's been a winning coach in the NFL. I think he's a culture changer. I think he's someone who could right the ship, whether players, staff, etc., like it or not. He does it his way, and his way has been effective. And then finally on this good section, Pete Carroll at 33-1. If I was going to place a bet on BetOnline AG, which I very much am not, and I encourage you not to as well, 33-1 for Pete Carroll is insanely good value. I cannot stress this enough. Don't worry about how old Pete Carroll is. Don't worry about any of that. The Bears are looking for a leader of men, a culture changer. Pete Carroll checks all those boxes. So the good is very good, in my opinion. Those three options, Ben Johnson, Mike Vrabel, Pete Carroll. Let's move to the bad, and this doesn't necessarily mean that I think that they're bad. I think that they may not be the best options. Thomas Brown at 12-1. He had his shot as interim head coach. There was a continued amount of losses after his taking over of the team. He was much better as an offensive coordinator. He did have an opportunity to kind of unlock Caleb Williams in the middle of the season when the Bears were playing well. I think after he took over, it has been a very tumultuous year for Thomas Brown. He comes in as a passing game coordinator, then assumes the role of offensive coordinator, then assumes the role of head coach in the interim. It's just a lot going on. I do think he deserves a fair shot at an interview. I do think he's someone that could potentially take a head coaching job in the future. Not sure he's ready for the situation that we have right now, but I know he's respected in the locker room. So not saying I think he's bad. I just don't think he might be the best fit. And on this bad list, I'd like to add Arthur Smith. Not a fan of his personally. Think he had a lot of challenges when he was leaving the Atlanta Falcons in his last head coaching stint. And I'm not necessarily super impressed with what I've seen from the Steelers. They've lost the last 4 games in a row. They will make the playoffs. I'm not saying he's a bad coach. I don't think he's the best fit personality-wise for where we're heading on the Bears. And then finally, the ugly. I'll keep this very short. Under no circumstance do I think the Bears should hire John Gruden. He's in the city now. He's working for Barstool. It's very evident and clear that this is totally a play to get him back into notoriety and have another team take a chance on him. I don't think that this is the chance that we should take. Not even certain they even intend to speak to John Gruden, but he is on the list, so I have to mention 50-1, crazy odds, but still not worth anything. So very pleased to see Ben Johnson, Mike Vrabel, Pete Carroll. Those would be my 3 favorite candidates based on the information that I shared above. Wouldn't mind a guy like Aaron Glenn if we decide to go on the defensive side. I am a fan of the Lions. I don't root for the Lions, but I have a lot of friends that, root for the Lions, and they are objectively a very fun team to watch. I love the vibe that Aaron Glenn brings, and I do think he is ready to take the reins of an NFL franchise. And finally, to put a bow on this, Brian Flores is a very interesting candidate. I do believe he deserves another shot here as a head coach. We know how things ended in Miami. It is what it is. He's mentioned how much he's learned from that situation. His defense is insane, and everybody knows it, and it's something that I think is very valuable, so I hope he gets a shot as well. But finally, I really want Ben Johnson. If Ben Johnson ends up going somewhere else, give me Pete Carroll to change the culture of the Chicago Bears. I was listening to the radio. one of my mentors and some people that I look up to, Lawrence Holmes and Matt Spiegel, they had a reporter on from the Seattle Seahawks who'd worked with Pete Carroll, and the guy was boisterous, and it kind of sounded like he loved listening to himself talk, but he did say a lot of really interesting and strong endorsements for Pete Carroll, and I'm on board. So if it's Ben Johnson, great. That's the perfect hire. If it's not Ben Johnson, bring me some Pete Carroll. Again, one last time, I'm not encouraging anyone to bet on Bet Online AG. The list was for the purposes of this content, and that's all. All right, let's move on. We have college football playoff semifinals this week. And first thing I'll say, Midwest football has put their stamp on this entire 12-team tournament. We've got Notre Dame, we've got Penn State, we've got Ohio State, we've got Texas. That's 2 teams from the Midwest, 2 teams from the Big Ten, 3 teams from the North, and then you got Texas. So long gone are the days where the SEC is just throwing money at everyone under the table. All the money's on top of the table, and these kids are going where the money is the best. And I think that's a good thing for college football. Let's let Pete Feinbaum, pipe down a little bit, because the SEC, it may not mean as much as it meant when the slogan was "It just means more." All right, let's dive in. Notre Dame at Penn State. That is on Thursday. Notre Dame is 1.5-point favorites against Penn State in the Orange Bowl. Let's talk some splits. 70% of the money, which means the sharps are all over the Fighting Irish at -1.5. 66% of the public is also on the Fighting Irish. 56% of the money is on Notre Dame money line, and 53% of the public is on the Fighting Irish to win the game outright. So what does that mean? It means the public and the sharps are aligned here, and I couldn't disagree more for a few reasons. I was listening to the Big College Football Show, which you can see on CHSN and over our air with Jake Butt and Joshua Perry, 2 voices that I really value in the college football space. They both seem to think that Notre Dame is on upset alert. Here's what I've learned. Here's what I've dug into. I like Penn State simply because this game feels like it's going to be a war of attrition. Jeremiah Love, far and beyond one of the most important players on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish roster. He was banged up to end the last game they played in the quarterfinals. Not exactly sure his status, but reports out of practice, as I've learned, is he looks a little stiff. He's wearing a bulky brace, but he is trying to play. So you're going to get Jeremiah Love at not 100%. They have a good stable of running backs, but no one that can change a game like Jeremiah Love. Jeremiah Love had, I believe, 11 touchdowns in his last 8 games or something leading into the quarterfinal games. Absolute game changer, someone who can wreck a game. He had a 90-yard run or something, in one of these quarterfinal games. Someone who other teams have to game plan for. If he's not 100%, the dynamic of this Fighting Irish team is completely different. Riley Leonard is great with his legs. I have questions from what I've seen on how much success he can have throwing the ball. It's one thing to have your best player out. It's one thing to have your best player injured. If you have a combination of those where he's not playing, he's not effective, and you got to have Riley Leonard dropping back and throwing the ball 35, 40 times, that spells disaster, I think, for Notre Dame. Penn State has a professional defense. They've got a bunch of guys across the board that will play on Sundays. They also have a really dynamic offense with Drew Aller and Tyler Warren, who should be a first-round pick. I'm not the biggest fan of Drew Aller, but he's played really well. He's played well enough to get these guys across the finish line leading up to this game. So if you're looking at it from an X's and O's, head-to-head, who's got the edge matchup, I would give the edge to Penn State. Now, there are very much questions about James Franklin in big games. He won the game against Boise State. Understood. I do think that was a little bit of a lopsided matchup. But here's where we're going to figure out, is he the guy who can get his team prepared and locked in enough to win these big games. This is the biggest game he's ever coached in, bar none, full stop. I don't think anyone would argue that watched Penn State over the last handful of years. He has to get it done against this Notre Dame Fighting Irish team, or else there will continue to be questions about, can he get the job done? If the Notre Dame Fighting Irish come in here limping and are not at 100%, this is another reason why Penn State should take advantage. A lot of times people look at the spread and say Notre Dame is the better team. That's not necessarily true. I think a lot of the money is going to dictate what this line does leading up to kickoff. And I think if Notre Dame was that much better, you would see a bigger spread, right? You would see a 3, maybe a 3.5. But because of the injuries, because of everything that I mentioned earlier, this game could be and should be a lot closer than what the odds makers think. So I like Penn State in this. I have an official pick. I'm going to save that until after I preview the game on Saturday, which is, of course, the Ohio State Buckeyes and the Texas Longhorns in the Cotton Bowl. So let's get into those splits quickly. We have 80% of the money is on the Ohio State Buckeyes to cover a 6-point spread. They're -6 in the game. And 82% of the public is on the Buckeyes spread as well. Let's take a look at the money line. 76% of the money and the public are on the Buckeyes money line. What does that tell me? People are prisoner of the moment. Ohio State is a very talented team. They have 5 stars all over the field. They have a quarterback in Will Howard who maybe isn't going to be a top draft pick, but is someone who has won big games and is a really solid, I heard Jake and Joshua from the Through the Whistle podcast call him a junkyard dog, a JT Barrett type, someone who's not going to be a high draft pick but can get it done at the collegiate level. That's what Will Howard is. He's been in some wars. He's been in some battles. He's tested, and he understands. My question for odds makers is, Texas has some of the best corners in the league, and we watched Ohio State just torch Oregon's secondary. I don't think they're going to be able to do that with ease. I think the Jeremiah Smith developments are all very much well noted. The dude went absolutely bonkers in that game in the Rose Bowl against Oregon. The game plan will be to take touches away from Jeremiah Smith, maybe force the running backs to run, and that could spell danger, I think, for the Buckeyes. I admittedly root for Michigan, family on my dad's side of the family from Michigan. That's no secret if you know me. The Michigan game, when Ohio State basically ran the ball to their demise, is what I'm going to point to. I don't think Ryan Day is silly enough to run that same kind of game plan, but I do think this is a game that the Ohio State Buckeyes will have to run the ball successfully, because if they make Will Howard stand back there and throw all day, they're going to get in some trouble. I think the Texas secondary is as close to elite as you can get, and they're going to be ready for the challenge. On the Texas side, questions about Quinn Ewers, questions about, how they spread the ball around. I've watched a little bit of Texas. I haven't watched a ton of them, but what I do know is Sark is a really good coach, someone who will probably pop up on the radars of NFL teams, if not this year, definitely next year if the Texas, success continues. So something interesting to watch. This is like, a lot of people say styles make fights. This might be a high-scoring shootout, and, it might be what all the people want to see. For me, I like Big Ten football. I like leading with defense, but might see a lot of points scored in this one. I think the over-under was 53.5, which is a ton of points for a semifinal game. So not sure what we're going to see exactly. My fandom is going to dictate my pick a little bit, and I'm not going to be I'm not going to be shy about that. There's no way I'm betting on the Buckeyes, but I do think there's a strategic way where we can take Texas and have some fun with it. This is going to be a really fun game, though. I encourage everyone who's listening, if you have a bet, hit me on social, hit me on Instagram, Twitter, whatever, at Mike Alex Bowling. Let me know who you've got, what you're playing, because I'm looking for not sides specifically. I'm not really into it, especially in college. If anyone's got any sneaky player props, hit me up. I'm always down to lock something in. So for my picks, for my college football picks, it is just one play, but it's two plays in it. I'm taking a teaser this week. I'm taking a teaser. So if you go to DraftKings and you bet two spreads, Penn State and Texas, you hit the little drop down, you play the teaser. It's a 6-point teaser. You'll get Penn State +7 in a hook, and you'll get Texas at +12. That's -120 on DraftKings. I love it. These games have been incredibly hard to read. You never know what's going to happen in these games. They've had, only a handful of days to prepare versus the 3 weeks they had when the regular season ended. Anything can happen in these games, but I like the idea that I get Penn State plus a touchdown. If they lose by 7, you cash. And I get Texas +10. You never want to, bet through some of these key numbers. So I'm not taking any more points than 12. I'm taking the 12. I'm hoping that Texas can keep it within 10. Texas's offense is really dynamic, so I do think even if they're down, they have a chance to make a run and keep this thing respectable. So my play for the weekend, Penn State and Texas teaser. You get Penn State at 7.5. You get Texas at +12. You hold your nose, you cross your fingers, and if you can cash, I think that's good odds at -120. Finally, the most important thing this weekend is the NFL wildcard round. There are 6 games. It's one of the most fun weekends to bet if you like NFL football. I'm not going to go through all the games because everyone has different opinions. The lines are going to change. The injury reports are going to come out. It's too early to call it for some of these games, but what I do want to share, and I mentioned this, I think, on a few episodes ago, my fandom, my heart is with the Chicago Bears. If I had to pick another team, it would be the Baltimore Ravens. And the people close to me know that I just want to see Lamar get one so bad because it's deserved. Lamar Jackson has been one of the best quarterbacks in the league, despite everyone wanting to turn him to a wide receiver or running back. John Harbaugh gives him the chance, builds the team around him, and look at him flourish. He's setting records. They had a top 5 offense of all time this year. And every year I get excited and I'm like, this is the year. And something happens and they kind of choke. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen again. The Steelers are going to come to Baltimore this week to play in this wild card game. And I'm nervous. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm very nervous because the Steelers always have the Ravens number and it's tough. All the success kind of gets thrown out the window. If you look at it from a bird's eye view, this looks like a game that the Ravens should win easily. They kind of crushed them the last time they played anyway. But it's just so hard to do that against the Mike Tomlin team. Mike Tomlin's one of the best coaches in the history of the game, I would say. And, call the success what it is. He's a great leader of men. If anyone's been watching Hard Knocks on Max, wouldn't you love to play for a guy like Mike Tomlin? Obviously you would. So let me go through the splits really quick for this weekend's game, and then I got a little bit more that I want to share with you at the end. The Ravens are 9.5-point favorites in this game. My goodness, that's a huge spread. That's what Vegas thinks about the slide that the Steelers are on right now. So I'm hesitant to say 9.5 is a good bet. It's just too many points in a playoff game, especially a division rival. This is the 3rd time they're going to play each other this year. I would stay away from that spread for sure. The over-under is 43.5. 62% of the money is on the under. I feel like that is such a smart bet. This is going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight. And just so you have this information, 56% of the public is on the over, so they expect more points than, I think the smart people in Vegas. I always like listening to the smart people, so I'm going to take the under in this one. Betting the under is not that fun, but when you're talking about a division rival, they know each other's secrets. They play each other so many times and have these two, John Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin, have played each other so many times. Like, there's no surprises in this game. It's going to come down to big plays. It's going to come down to turnovers. And finally, just to put a bow on it, -485 on DraftKings if you want the Ravens money line. 90% of the public is on the Ravens money line. They're in every parlay. And speaking of parlays, I do want to share, again, I think I shared this a few episodes ago, but I do have money attached to the Baltimore Ravens. Back on August 20th, this is so goofy. Back on August 20th, I bet the Orioles to beat the Yankees, the Braves to beat the Phillies, the Brewers to beat the Cardinals, and the Cubs to beat the Tigers. And the last leg of that at 10-1 was the Baltimore Ravens. I'm not sure if this is going to come up, but you can kind of see I used the 50 or 35% boost builder. So I got the Ravens at 241-1. It's a $5 bet. And if the Ravens win the Super Bowl, I win $1,200. Cash out currently sitting at $131. I'm not cashing out anything because I think this could be the year for Lamar and the Ravens. If they get all the way to the AFC Championship and they end up having to go to Kansas City, we may have some hedge discussions, but it's only $5. So it is what it is. But I'm confident. I've watched the Hard Knocks. I'm really invested in this team even going before this year. So if you have any futures that you have pending, hit me up on social at Mike Alex Bowling, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, wherever. Want to see those futures tickets. This is a great time of year for people who put bets in August and, early September. Even before then, obviously the lines were out way before the season started. So I'm excited that I have something to root for. I'm a big, fan of the Ravens, as I mentioned. So if they can make it all the way to the Super Bowl, that would be freaking awesome. I'm going to be in Vegas for the Super Bowl. Can't wait to go back there and, watch the game at Circa Stadium Swim. If anyone who listens to this has been to Circa Stadium Swim, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Probably the greatest place on earth for bettors. So I'm going to wrap things up with that. I'm a big believer in the Ravens, and I hope that they can get it done on Saturday. I'll be at a wedding. One of my good buddies, Hans, is getting married in Tampa, so I'm leaving the cold. I'm going to go hang out with him and celebrate his wedding. I might have to take my phone out and just peek at it. So if you're listening, I'm sorry in advance. There's no way I could not keep my eyes on it, but really pumped for that. Really pumped for the Ravens and really excited, obviously, to see all the football this week. It's an awesome week for betting. Don't blow your wad all over the place, please, because this is a weekend of just build up the bankroll, man. Don't fire from the hip on Thursday and then have to chase on Friday and Saturday. And it's a long weekend of football. There's a lot of games to bet. There's a lot of opportunity. Don't go too crazy too early. Slow and steady wins the race. And as always, respect that coin. So I'm Mike Bowling. I appreciate everyone for listening. I appreciate everyone who's supported. Hug your people. Call your mom. Call your dad. And obviously, respect coin. Until next week, y'all.